Kensil Culture, Puppets, Props, Puns, Podcasts.
No, that can't be. She can't. Oh, no. What? Oh, hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another segment of Kensil Culture, the pop culture magazine. And ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to introduce our namesake, Mr. John Kensil. John Kensil.
Hey, people out there who should use Head and Shoulders. I'm John Kensil here, one of the hosts of Kensil Culture with my friend, the legendary Wid right here. WID, that stands for...
Without identification.
Went to Idaho. Yes.
No, that's what Britney Spears says, Idaho.
Princess Cuckoo Bats, she was crazy. Wid, we had a wonderful weekend and we just talked about it. Wid, there's an anniversary today. My dad went to heaven...
And I'm sure
5 years ago.
I'm so sorry that for your loss, John. 5 years ago.
Yes, and
you guys were good friends. You did films together.
Yes,
right?
If you look at me on Facebook, look at my videos.
You did plumbing together. You grew up with him. He knew you all your life, John.
I'll tell you what. I had to take care of him like the last 10 years of his life, and he lived a long life, 89 years old. You can't ask for any, more than that, right? And
I'm asking for that,
But
I think a lot of us are.
I can still fit into his bellhop uniform.
Well, John, I was touched because I saw that Father's Day present that you gave to your father. It was the best present ever.
What was that?
You moved out of the cellar, okay, and got a room for. But
I told him as soon as I turned 50, I'm out of here. But
they're a very close knit family, and the Kensils. He was always the
He liked you.
He liked me. He's a patriarch. How do you say that? The patriarch of the Kensil clan, and they all turned out really nice.
You know what's funny too? Like I'm looking at myself on the monitor there. I never thought I looked like my dad. But as you mature, I didn't get older. As you mature, I found myself looking more and more like him. But it was very funny. He was a guy who said, "Son of a b, shit, bastard, crap," all cursing. As he got older,
John, this is a family show.
Sorry.
Okay.
I was reading.
Those are archaic.
I was reading from the headlines. But as he got older, man, he cursed like a shrimp boat captain.
I think that up until that, that cursing doesn't really matter. Even the F-bomb doesn't really matter. I remember club owners going, you can use 2 F-bombs and a couple of bowel movement jokes, but, hey, that's it. And if you do any more, we cut you off.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember there used to be a law for that. They used to have a rule. The middle could say it once, and the headliner could say it all he wanted. No, the MCs weren't allowed to say the F word. Well, my dad at the end, oh, my God, he swore like a Illinois golf caddy.
Like what were some of his colorful swears? That
C, sucker, mother F, Canadian, whatever. Just he went berserk. He went bonkers. But a very funny character, and he was a very good actor too. I would make little videos that you can catch on John Kensil YouTube or on my Facebook videos. Very funny.
He would have had this job as your faithful sidekick, if he had not passed away at the age of what?
89. It was
89.
And he died from he was on steroids and bungee jumping, but he had. But what do you call it? A good, he was a hardworking guy. Works, his whole life. Then but as you got old, it was very nice too. At his funeral, all my friends showed up. All my comedian friends, like people I never thought, like famous guys from the area, and it was really nice. But the only part that stunk was a couple of comedians set up merch tables, and but it was nice. And no, it was weird too.
I went to John's dad's funeral, and all I got was this crummy T-shirt.
Yeah, all I got was embalmed. But he had. But no, it's weird too. All right, it was today he died. I think whenever it was. Anyway, he was supposed to be buried, but it was on Good Friday.
Oh,
right, which is
you got to be quiet from 12 to 3.
Which it's weird too. I don't know why they call it Good Friday because that's when they crucified.
Yeah.
But anyway, he got buried at the Veterans Cemetery up in New Hope, Pennsylvania, where we were at last week, or no, Washington's Crossing, Pennsylvania. And but he got buried there, but they don't bury people on Good Friday up there. And my dad had to sit on ice for like another week and a half. They had an opening for him, right? It really did. It was, and no, it's really neat too. If you ever go to a military cemetery, the crosses are all perfect. They're all like 3.5 feet apart. What's this? What's going on there? Oh,
I'm sorry. Jim.
We'll have our cross to bear to cross. The bear crossed, but this is a real Kodiak moment. But I don't know how I never knew how they did that, right? Someone had said that's only the crosses are there. The real bodies are buried somewhere else. But because when I was there, I didn't see any fresh graves. Like they dig a grave unless they're real precise when they do it, right? Well, when my mom passed away a year later, they buried her in the same thing with them.
Wow.
Then I found something out. Any unmarried kids can be buried with them.
Really?
Yes.
Well, there goes your engagement.
Yeah. Sorry, bitches. Yeah. Right? But my dad was hilarious. Check the videos out, and it's and I know I talk fast. I'll slow down. I do try and slow down, enunciate properly for the show with my accent. But I was with my mother and father watching TV. A commercial came on.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Mother, Father, I'm going to the kitchen. Do you want anything out of the refrigerator?"
Like any serial killer would do.
Yes. And my dad said, "What the hell did he say? He's got a monkey's head in the refrigerator?" And my mom, kidding around, goes, "Yeah, it's for one of his jokes." And I heard my dad go, "Who the hell would laugh at that?"
John, you always worry about what the civilian population thinks about your jokes. Now, it's not bad to call your parents civilian or your brothers and sisters or some friends when they're civilians and they don't know the intricacies of the comedy world. I mean, we don't know what it is either that makes people laugh, but we know that sometimes we abstract that emotion out of people. But you always judge yourself about, just because your mother thought your act stunk, okay? It doesn't mean to, that everybody, no. It's just that people who aren't in show business don't understand.
She used to wash her hair with soap. Yeah. But my dad, when he'd be sitting there watching TV during the day, he would watch Mass from Alabama, right? He had a camera.
I know.
Right.
My parents don't watch that. My mom did too.
And it was you're right. It's a stationary camera. It's above in the corner. It's up over there, right? And you hear the priest comes out in his gold robe, like, "Body of Christ," because it's from Alabama, right? You might be a redneck if you take the body of Christ. Well, my dad be watching it. And I would go out
You're going to hell, John. I'm just sorry.
Oh, sorry. I would go out to the front window.
You're going to Catholic
right?
hell.
And we can see this here, right? All right. I go out to the front window, and my dad be watching TV, and I'd always get a puppet almost every day, and make it pop up, and walk down and look in the window at him, right? And then keep walking, and I would hear my dad go, "Jesus Christ, what the hell is that? What's that thing out there? There's a goddamn monkey outside," or something like that. It was very fun.
You do that to an 87-year-old man, okay, and add to his delusions of dementia and, by having puppets. That's gaslighting, John. That's gaslighting at its finest.
Also, I still have his voice on my dad recording my outgoing message on my voicemail.
Now, I call John, because we and every time it's like, this is John Kensil's father. He's not here right now, but you can leave a message. And that's exactly
I would like to change it.
No, don't change it, John. That's a beautiful message.
I've had like
reminds you of your dad, and your dad is he was a coworker of you. Okay,
I've had important people call me, like lawyers and moyles, and they got to hear that message. But a very very interesting guy, and well liked. So I want to be polite. I don't want to be Victor Von Cursing on the show. His friends used to call him Captain A-hole, but they used the real word. Right, and not, but not
Captain A-hole. I thought he was a rear admiral. Okay,
but not as a curse word. My dad used the A word for everything. Hey, give me that, and he would say like A-hole hamburger, right? So his friends started calling him Captain A-hole. And it made me laugh.
At least he wasn't calling everything John,
right?
Right, and trying to assimilate.
My ex-girlfriend, who was a Stevie Nicks impersonator, Klonopin addict.
Oh yeah.
She when she first met my father, she had a mouthful of gum.
Oh.
All right, and I go, Dad, this is my girlfriend here.
I
right?
didn't know she was Jewish.
Well, that's very close, right? Well, she's going, hi, Mr. Kensil. I go, Dad, she's a singer, right? And he goes, what'd she sing? The Gum Snapping Concerto? And I never heard my dad say anything funny his whole life except that, right? And he's
concerto.
Yeah, just a very funny guy. When the stories get together, he would say things, right? And
you had a great relationship with your father. I did too, and I'm just saying. I think that's. That sort of shapes your, your worldview. What your my dad was sort of a, let it come as it is.
My God!
7 kids and.
He used to. I don't want to say it on the show, but he would say when he saw famous beloved comedians from the '50s who had TV series, right? Like he hated Milton Berle, and he used to call him a bucktooth swear word. Because I can't stand that bucktooth, and he'd say the slur. But
do you think that's why you're so opinionated sometimes? Do you think you must have gotten that from you've got to be taught.
Yeah. I got there's
I've never seen somebody have as good of a relationship on camera. I don't know. Was it the same off camera, John? Because I saw a lot of your.
Oh my God! You also too. Here's some word of advice too out there too. If anybody's out there taking care of an old person, right? They're so used to a regular routine.
Yeah.
My father used to say, "Was that lightning?" Oh, that's my dad listening to us. My dad. As he got older, we moved to another house, a smaller house. As my dad got older, he was getting confused, and he'd say, "When we getting out of here? When we going back home?" Right? And he'd been out of the house for 12 years, right? I would say, in an hour, Dad. You go, okay, and then he would forget about it, right? Well, I saw my friends go through the same thing, and their parents would say, like, when we going here? And they go, no, you live here now. And you'd see the old people's eyes crinkle like, I don't want to be here. What am I doing here? And make them upset, and they start crying. So you give in to them for a second. You go, when we going home? In an hour. And I go, okay, and by then they forget about it. But I have friends who would
you got to be very delicate. I worked as a teenager and a little beyond. I worked in old age homes, and I would have the best friends there by just asking them about their lives. Okay, and even if it was delusional, okay, they would still be able to talk and felt a little bit a little bit more useful by answering questions. Okay, I would have them push me in the wheelchair sometimes, and just opposite what a orderly. That's what I was in the old age home, an orderly.
I took my dad to a restaurant in Northeast Philadelphia called Tiffany's.
Oh, I know. Tiffany's Diner.
Famous diner. Very good food there. It's like a landmark diner. After nightclubbing, it's a 24-hour diner. I took my parents there one day on a Sunday, and my dad used to sulk like this, and this gigantic woman came in.
Oh, my God.
And he
was he ever politically correct?
No, never, right? And my dad would just glare at her, and he said, like, out loud, Jesus Christ, look at that goddamn bull moose. And she heard him, right? We went to a Chinese restaurant, right?
Another example of inappropriateness. And I love your father.
And I'm not going to use any slurs here, but I'll tell you what he did. We went to a Chinese restaurant with my father, right? Mm-hmm. And the lady goes, there was like 6 of us. She goes, where would you like to sit? And someone goes over there. And my dad goes, yeah, sit anywhere you want. Nobody's here. Like it was a failed diner, right? And then, right? So they bring out food for 6 people, and they put the wrong thing down in front of him like 3 times because they didn't know who it was, right? And he goes, and my dad says to the Chinese waiter, keep going. You'll get it right someday. So at the end of the dinner, all the Asian people who are very sweet, nice, beautiful people are waving to us. We're leaving. They're like, goodbye, thank you for coming out. And my nephew says to my dad, hey, Pop, you still have one more chance to say something insulting to these people, right? So they're all saying, goodbye, goodbye. And my dad goes, adios, amigos. Storms out. Right?
Oh, my. And did your father ever get called out on the carpet for his, inappropriateness? Because
no, but I remember driving up 95 with him as a little kid in a plumbing van. As you're a kid, you'd love going to work at your dad. It was the coolest thing.
Sure,
oh my God, I'm an adult, right? And you get paid for it. My dad used to go bonkers. He used to hate driving up 95, and an ambulance comes flying up behind him, right? And he would say, Jesus Christ. I remember the good old days when people would die at home. Then he said this.
That's heavy. That's heavy right there. That's,
my
your dad was heavy. He had a lot of, 89, he had a lot of experience.
He hated women drivers in red sports cars. And we'd be driving, and he would say, you know what I wish I had? I'm like, I don't know, $1 million, Papa? He goes, no. I wish I had like a 10-foot mallet. I could put it out the window and crack their windshield saying, sorry, you're driving too fast. And he'd be cracking windows. There's a famous school for a girls' school my nieces went to.
Okay, not a dame.
Yes. Well, yeah, sort of, yes. Called St. Basil's Academy. It's a high-end girls' school. Well, my dad thought he knew something about modern-day media.
12. No.
So he's driving my little niece to school, and she's a sophomore. They're driving for a while. He's quiet. And my dad's in his 70s now. And he says, Julie, there's a whole East Coast versus West Coast rap war going on. And she's looking at him, and he goes, yeah, Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. That's not his real name. His real name is like Herman Brown, right? And my niece was amazed that my dad's talking about the East Coast, West Coast rap wars. Oh, my God.
East Coast!
Oh my God, but a funny guy. And it's weird. He could say that stuff, and you knew not to. I
love that he kept up with the East Coast, West Coast, rap wars. We're still seeing it today. I mean, the life expectancy of a rapper isn't as long as a record now.
One time, my parents had a Saturn SUV, a Saturn car, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we took my dad's keys off because, there's a point, like Dick Van Dyke, who just crashed in a wall, 97 years old, shouldn't be driving.
No.
All right. My dad loved watching the TV series Naked and Afraid, right, where it gets doughy couples who look like the Michelin Man, if it was a man or a woman, and they throw them out in the wilderness.
I've been both, naked and afraid.
Yes. Well, my mom would come down and go, get this filth off. I don't want the filth on the TV here. My dad's like, who cares? Look, it's all blurred out. And if you ever did see the show, they're not sexually enticing. They're not.
No, they're the warts and all.
Yes,
on the naked part.
Right.
Okay.
So my mom was screaming at my dad, and he wanted to watch it. And the show's stupid anyway. Well, he got mad at my mom. He stormed out. So my mom calls me, and she goes, John, you're
naked, afraid, and mad.
And she goes, your dad's gone. He took the car and left. I go, how could he? We hid all the keys away, right? She goes, I don't know. I came down. The car's gone. Here, my dad found an old set of keys for a Pontiac Grand Am, a totally different car company. They would never fit. It would never, ever fit in a Saturn. It's a foreign car. No fit. My dad was so mad. He went out there and he jammed the key into the ignition and kept going and started it. It's like putting a screwdriver in a car, like hot wiring a car.
I've been stealing them wrong.
Yeah, right.
All these
So we go bonkers trying to find him. We call the cops, and then we start realizing, wait a minute. My dad only goes to 3 places: McDonald's, the river, or some other diner. I drive to the McDonald's, he's not there. I drive to the diner, he's not there. And I go, all right, I go down to the Delaware River, there's a boat landing. He's sitting there reading the Sunday comics. And the cops are looking for him. Yeah, all right. But I don't know how he did it, but he that's what he did. And but he was a real, everybody he's a character. And I've made funny videos with him. Very interesting, funny guy.
He was a great man, and you were lucky to be brought up by somebody who had such a moral compass and, was able to bring up 7 kids. And be able to watch Naked and Afraid. That poor man, I mean, think about it, that the majority of his life, everything was censored. Oh my God. Here it is on TV with the blatant, naked in the title. Of course he's going to watch it.
But the show's like so unsexual. Ugh.
I know, but they're just people who are actors and need the exposure.
Hear that? They need the exposure. Check us out though. The first celebrity I ever saw in my life.
Yeah,
I was walking down the Atlantic City Boardwalk with my father, and we saw Jerry Vale.
Pretend you don't see her. And she was in Goodfellas. He was in Goodfellas, Jerry Vale.
Oh, really? I never knew that.
He was. He's the act at the Copacabana when they get the seat for him. And
okay, all right.
And he sends "Pretend you don't see her."
Oh, very cool.
And he was actually at one of my shows one time with Willard, not Willard. What's his name?
Willard Scott.
Not Willard Scott. His last name was Willard.
Fred Willard.
Fred Willard and he were at. They must have been appearing at this was very early in my career, and it was. They were sitting down, and Fred Willard was taking notes from the comedian, and he had to go over and say, "Hey, you can't take notes."
This is at a comedy show, and Fred Willard, I guess because you need material, he was writing jokes down that he heard the comedian saying, and we had to go tell him ixnay on that.
Well, I think a committee of us went over. Nobody had the, but he was writing it down and blatantly going, "Hey, that's fine. I got to write that and reuse that." And so I don't know. Me, Steve Young, and somebody else came up to him and said, "You can't do that no more."
But
Jerry Vale's hair was perfect.
Yeah, he was like Al Martino, one of those guys, like a minor hit in the 50s, early 60s, Jack Jones. Mm-hmm. But check us out, though. We're never talking about these cheesy celebrities, all right? One of the big ones, like we mentioned on the previous podcast about the dating game show or Newlywed Game,
Chuck Barris.
Bobby Sherman was on.
Bobby Sherman.
Well, around that time period, there's a handful of guys who look like that. They looked unreal. They looked like a human Ken doll.
We would call them ABC guys because they looked like they were on Channel 7. Channel 7 was always the most, Hollywood, were perfect, actors and everything.
And he's right. And the guys all had like a chipmunk face, big, nice set of white teeth, and real nice thick hair. Well, there was, like you said, there was Bobby Sherman. Another guy was a guy named John Davidson, who eventually went on to host That's Incredible. Then he hosted the Hollywood Squares. Just a generic, likable guy. TX talk show host.
He was more of a celebrity than he was an actor.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he sang.
John Davidson. He had a couple albums, and the ladies all liked them.
But he was weird. It was like he was generically. He looked like he was printed out on a plastic printer. What do you call them? 3D printer. Square jaw, blue eyes, and he looked like.
Stop! I'm right here.
Yeah. All right. But there's a famous story dealing with him, and a very interesting interview. In Kentucky, right? In 1977, I wasn't even born yet. Ladies, in Southgate, Kentucky, there was a nightclub fire there, which is the 7th deadliest nightclub fire in history. Occurred Memorial Day weekend, where 165 people died.
Yikes! And
another 200 were injured. Well, John Davidson was singing there that night. That's why it was packed. He was gigantic. I forget how many thousands of people were there to see him. Today, you don't even know who he is. All right, you'll see him like on commercials for reverse mortgages or cat and oil. But he was performing. It had several rooms in this big giant. It was called the Beverly.
It was a big giant club across the river from Cincinnati. That's what the appeal was, because you know laws are different in different places. So a lot of the Cincinnati folk would come right over the bridge and go to this complex that only hired like top echelon Vegas and Atlantic City and different acts.
Well, I'm reading it right now. It said it had a capacity between 900 and 1,300 people, depending on the show. They had 3,000 people in the room. They had seats in the aisles. It was packed. Like, these people, were they desperate going, I got to see John Davidson? Right?
I don't think they were all that. I think there were other events going on at the...
there was a wedding.
There were, and this place was this nightclub, like the Beverly Hills Club. It was built without paying too much attention to the codes, and so things weren't marked like they should be. And exits and pathways would lead into nowhere and things like that. And that's how a lot of the people perished.
And there's faulty wiring. And it's weird though too. Now this is the seventh deadliest. But you hear this stuff happen, and you got like the band
White Snake, or not White Snake, White
Great White, right?
Yeah.
Like same thing there. The stuff caught on fire and 100 people died. Like, oh my God, right? Like the Copacabana, what's it? The Copacabana fire, where the hay and bamboo went up.
No, that was the
Coconut Grove.
The Coconut Grove. Yeah. Okay, that was in Boston. Mm-hmm. Okay, and what happened was that some of the decorations were just made out of very flammable paper and went up like that. And, there was a lot of
I remember
Gibson that was actually passed away in that.
I remember it happened, too, because that summertime, that's the summer Elvis died. Wow. That's the summer Groucho Marx died. Wow. Star Wars came out. And this was the big horror event besides that. And it's just, some people think it may have been arson, but... it's just they're still investigating it today, but it's just like awful. And then right after that, like the next year, or 78 or 79, I think it was 79, was the Who concert where the people got crushed to death.
Yeah, where it was, and something real weird started, and that was in Cincinnati too.
Exactly right. Yeah,
yeah.
It was. Remember, WKRP did an episode on it,
and there was and I don't think the person who was in charge of that, the responsible person got convicted of anything. I think they threw it out, or did they throw it out of court?
Well, for the Kentucky fire, or the Who one?
The Kentucky fire.
Oh, there's
Kentucky fire.
They're still They're actually like still using it now for other nightclub fires. But it's just this whole thing. How could they still let people get away with having events in a deadly room like that? Like
that's because the inspector, I guess it was kind of lax in Kentucky, during the early 70s when it was built, and they were putting on additions and everything.
Yeah, and they kept building room after room. Now,
and it became a maze, and a lot of times. The doors were locked in a couple of things.
Yeah. Now this is along these lines. We mentioned earlier on the previous podcast about the Bucks County Playhouse, how cheesy 60s and 70s stars would appear there, right?
Uh-huh.
One of them was Charles Nelson Riley.
All right.
He was we talked about before. He's like an effeminate, prissy guy who would be like, oh, grab his collar and things got.
He was a staple on like the Password or the Match Game the Match Game, but he was also a Tony-winning performer and had all sorts of. Charles Nelson Riley, very affected but very funny and everybody loved him without without any hidden agendas. But he was he actually used it was a fire at
The circus.
The Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus.
And also, too, it was in Connecticut, which isn't that far from Cincinnati, sort of.
Hartford, Connecticut,
Yeah.
1944.
He was 13. They went there. It was one of the worst disasters ever in Connecticut history. The Big Top caught on fire, and 160 people were killed, and hundreds more were injured. It so traumatized Charles Nelson Riley, in spite of his lifelong love of acting, he never sat in an audience again, claiming that being part of a large crowd reminded him of that terrible day. And if you see interviews with him, he said it was just horrific seeing bodies that were trapped coming out. How awful.
See, what one of the reasons were they set up the tent, and all the tent had beautiful sawdust on the ground. That's what you get with, and that's like kindling.
Yep.
And the tents, how they waterproofed them was with paraffin, which you find in candles, and gasoline, and that would waterproof the tent. Now, the exits were blocked by some of the circus wagons that they used. That's why a lot of people couldn't get out. They didn't block it on purpose. It was just that they were very rushed. They had to put on a show, and so it was half baked. So they think it was caused by a cigarette.
Monkey smoking cigarettes.
Cigarette. But 5 years later, an arsonist on another thing confesses that he was the one who set the fire. So now there are two different things. Now, John, this is a surprise. Well, I know we're almost over, but I bought this, okay? This is Palmolive, okay?
Yes.
Dishwashing. Now, there was a woman actress, okay, who played for years and years in the commercial for Palmolive, okay?
Oh, you're soaking in it.
You're soaking in it, okay?
Yes. Midge.
And Midge. And Midge was actually there. She was a local weather girl in there, and she brought a bunch of kids to the to the circus, and then went back to her job. And then they found out that one of the kids, they got out because one of the kids was a Boy Scout, had a knife and ripped a hole in the tent and got through there. So Madge, was so thankful that her charges didn't do this, but
that's interesting.
Not only was Charles Nelson Riley there and Madge from there, but John, this was a surprise. Hal Blaine was there also. Hal Blaine, the drummer, the most prolific drummer in music history. How many? 10,000 recordings?
6,000 to 10,000. He doesn't even know. They would play Hal Blaine records. He only died a couple years ago. He did work with the Beach Boys and Bruce Springsteen and Frank Sinatra.
Everybody.
He
was in the
Wrecking Crew.
He was in the Wrecking Crew. Okay.
Oh, God. I know, wrapping up.
Yeah.
All right. The famous female bass player.
Okay. Carol
Kay.
Carol Kay.
She was a bass player, and she's just as prolific for bass playing. Dun, 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 and the beat goes on, and God only knows, and California Girls, that's her, all right? Her and Hal Blaine hated each other. She's still alive. He went to heaven. She posts things all the time that he used to call her. He used to call her a letter of the alphabet. It's the third letter of the alphabet. He used to call her that. They hate each other. It's the funniest thing seeing old people curse each other out.
Well, they were working in close proximity all the time, and and of course Hal was sort of a ladies' man and would probably be a little bit off color in the presence of a lady, which Carol was.
Oh man, well, we can talk forever, as you probably noticed, about every freaking thing under God's green earth, but
pop culture,
right? But thank you for listening and watching.
Hey, this has been John Kensil and a legendary wit for Kensil Culture. Press that bell and ring that button.
Yes.